فأجاءها المخاض إلى جذع النخلة قالت يا ليتني مت قبل هذا وكنت نسيا منسيا فناداها من تحتها ألا تحزني قد جعل ربك تحتك سريا وهزي إليك بجذع النخلة تساقط عليك رطبا جنيا فكلي واشربي وقري عينا فإما ترين من البشر أحدا فقولي إني نذرت للرحمن صوما فلن أكلم اليوم إنسيا فأتت به قومها تحمله قالوا يا مريم لقد جئت شيئا فريا يا أخت هارون ما كان أبوك امرأ سوء وما كانت أمك بغية فأشارت إليه قالوا يا مريم كيف نكلم من كان في المهد سبيا قال إني عبد الله آتاني الكتاب وجعلني نبيا وجعلني مباركا أينما كنت وأوصاني بالصلاة والزكاة ما دمت حيا وبرا بوالدتي ولم يجعلني جبارا شقيا والسلام علي يوم ولدت ويوم أموت ويوم أبعث حيا فحملته فانتبذت به مكانا قصيا. So she bore him, she conceived him, then she withdrew with him to a distant place, makanan qasiyya. Which was this distant place? She went away from Baytul Maqdis. Some Mufassirin say this was Baytul Lahm, Bethlehem, some miles from Baytul Maqdis. فأجاءها المخاض إلى جذع النخلة. Then her labor pain drove her to the trunk of a date palm. قالت يا ليتني مت قبل هذا. She said, if only I had died before this. وكنت نسيا منسيا. And I had been completely forgotten. I had gone into oblivion. At this point, an angel calls out to her. فناداها, from a little lower down the hill. فناداها من تحتها. So he called her from beneath her. قد ألا تحزني, that you should not grieve. قد جعل ربك تحتك سريا. Your Lord has caused a stream of water to flow beneath you. وهزي إليك بجذع النخلة. And shake towards yourself the date palm. وهزي إليك بجذع النخلة تساقط عليك رطبا جنيا. It will cause fresh dates. It will shower fresh dates upon you. فكلي واشربي. So eat and drink. وقري عينا. And cool your eyes, meaning by the sight of the child. فكلي واشربي وقري عينا فإما ترين من البشر أحدا. Then if you see any human being, فقولي, then say, إني نذرت للرحمن صوما. I have vowed a fast for Allah, for Ar-Rahman. فلن أكلم اليوم إنسيا. Therefore, I will not talk today to any human being. So what's happening here? To continue from yesterday, Maryam alayhi salatu was salam gives birth to this child in the state of being completely alone and unassisted. On this point, I may mention that this is a major form of charity, to establish maternity, natal facilities for mothers in poor parts of the world. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu is a Khalifa at the time. One of his wives is the wife of Kulthum. She's the daughter of Ali radiallahu anhu. It's her, the daughter of Ali radiallahu anhu. The famous story when he's walking the streets of Medina at night in the outskirts, and there's a tent there, and there's a man sitting outside the tent, and there's a wailing coming from inside the tent. And Sayyidina Umar asks the man if he can be of any assistance, and the man requests politely that Sayyidina Umar mind his own business. He doesn't recognize who this is. And Sayyidina Umar says to him, he says, look, maybe I can be of some assistance. And he explains, he says, my wife is in labor and she's alone. And Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu comes home and he says to his wife, would you like to do an act of piety tonight? And so together they come. She takes a pan from the house and some butter or some butter oil and some food stuffs and some other items of necessity, and together they go. And Sayyidina Umar gives company to the man while his wife goes into the tent. And a short while later she calls out, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, O Amir of the believers, give good news to your friend of a son. And the man is taken aback. He says, you're Amir al-Mu'mineen? You're Umar? He says, yes, I'm your brother. So this is an example of the Khalifa of the time coming to a person's personal assistance. Midwifery is an interesting branch of, if you can call it medicine. It's an ancient art as much as it is physical science, in the sense that it's something which is practiced in the world over, and it has been for thousands of years. And in many parts of the world, many a midwife has had training, which she's had from the local midwives, passed down the knowledge, acquired wisdom through the generations, and she might not have gone to a formal education. This is often the case in many parts of the world. It's not something which is new. It has both elements. There's of course the medical and scientific element, and then there's the practical skill of delivering a child, which these women know. And so the point here is, in the absence of proper medical care, many women suffer. And so when people think of how to invest their sadaqat, and I say sadaqat, there's this idea that everything should be focused on zakat. Zakat is very specific, and it's for very specific purposes. But remember, zakat is 1/40th of your surplus wealth. Your savings, 40 parts. You give one in zakat. What about the other 39 parts? لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. By the way, I'm not appealing for any charity. I'm talking about this in the context of this verse. So this is a general point. So Allah Ta'ala says that you won't reach the peaks of piety until you spend from that which you love. So this is an area of charity. These are the sort of unsung heroes around the world, people who assist in these types of circumstances. And this is especially the problem in those parts of the world, unfortunately, where there are many, how can we say, in these circumstances, child snatching happens, and women are unnecessarily taken for medical treatment, sometimes for surgery, just so that the clinic can make money. There are many scandals happening in the name of necessary medical treatment in many parts of the world, in poorer countries, in Asia, in Africa. And so this is an area towards which attention should be paid. So these verses of the Quran powerfully depict the condition of a woman who's on her own and she's delivering her child. So now she's given this reassurance from Allah. And what does she need? She needs nutrition, an important aspect of child delivery and mothering and labor. So what happens? Allah Azza wa Jal causes a dry stream of water to flow and become fresh again. And she has taken rest against a dry date palm. It doesn't bear fruit. But Allah Azza wa Jal shows her more of His qudra. The water has flowed where there was no water. قَدْ جَعَلَ رَبُّكِ تَحْتَكِ سَرِيًّا. And the date palm, she's told, وَهُزِّي إِلَيْكِ, shake it towards yourself. تُسَاقِطْ عَلَيْكِ رُتَبًا جَنِيًّا. It will cause fresh dates to sort of cascade, to shower down upon you, to fall upon you. Now there's a number of elements here, a number of lessons here. One lesson is that even here, the physical sabab, Allah could have caused the dates to fall upon her and to fall onto the ground near her from the tree without her shaking it. But Allah Ta'ala asked her to do this on behalf of Allah. The angel is giving this instruction. What does this teach us? It teaches us that Allah is the musabbib. He's the one who He creates the effect. But He does want us to take the sabab. Even though the sabab may be not physical, sometimes the dua is the sabab. To turn to Allah may be the sabab. It needs to be done, and the outcome will happen. But to sit with your hand upon your hand and do nothing in life, it's not the spirit of Islam. وَهُزِّي إِلَيْكِ بِجِذْعِ النَّخْلَةِ. It's a miracle. Now in reality, everything is a miracle. The farmer that plants thousands of seeds in drills and sees the whole crop and the food that you eat, it's all a miracle. Allah causes it to happen. If He didn't want it to happen, it wouldn't happen. But the point is, you do have to plant the seeds. وَهُزِّي إِلَيْكِ بِجِذْعِ النَّخْلَةِ. You do have to irrigate the land. You have to take the means. وَهُزِّي إِلَيْكِ بِجِذْعِ النَّخْلَةِ. Another lesson here. See, the date is a staple. All the constituents, the proteins and the sugars and the fats and all the other nutrients and minerals which a human being needs to survive, everything is found within this package. The date. The date. Everything is found in this. And this is historically true. For the Arab world today, for many, dates are still a staple. They consume dates in such large quantity. They're a major part of their main sort of food, go-to food. And they are consumed in all their stages, semi-raw, and after having been fully ripened. There are many different stages. Rutab, which is mentioned here, is the fresh date. It's not the dry date. So dates are consumed as very fresh and very dry, what we refer to in Urdu as chuhara, the very dry date. And then there's the in-between, the fresh dates. You have, and the rutab, which is usually kept in the freezer because it's very fresh, it spoils very quickly, which you don't see much of here, but most of you will be aware of these dates. Rutab. So basically, the date itself is a complete nutritional package. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this was his staple. The Sahaba, this was their staple. Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha says, we'd see one new crescent after another, month upon month upon month. And there would be no cause to light the stove. So the Sahabi asked to Aisha radiallahu anha, so how would you survive? And she says, dates and water, al-aswadain, the two items, the two black items. In Arabic, this is called taghlib, where you just use a dual form, because there's a dual form as well as a plural form, for anything which is paired together. So mum and dada, abawain, and walidain, and dates and water, because dates are black, aswadain, the two black things. You just make it into a dual because the two come together all the time. So dates and water. So they would survive like this all the time. And the Prophet ﷺ was physically extremely healthy. And not just Rasulullah ﷺ, Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha, the Sahaba generally. The Sahaba were very fit people. They were very healthy people. And they would have very little reason for getting ill. This is mentioned in a narration. We don't become ill because we don't eat until we're very hungry. And when we eat, we don't overfill. Simple solution. Moral for Ramadan. So the Sahaba were healthy people. They were physically fit. And they ate very little. Even when they were hungry. They would eat when they were very hungry. And when they did eat, they didn't eat too much. Now, since we're in Ramadan, to quickly mention this point, the benefits of fasting are widely acclaimed now. And there's a huge international sort of health movement in intermittent fasting, in which the idea is that you narrow down the window in which you eat to 4 to 6 hours. The less, the better. 8 hours maximum, 6 hours. You have that for free in these Ramadans. 4 hours, the less, the better. Now what happens? See, of course, you ought not to overeat in Ramadan anyway. But when you fast, one of the benefits is that the stomach shrinks anyway. Your appetite shrinks. So you find it easy to fill up with less. It becomes much easier. And when your body rests for some 16 hours plus, and it doesn't have to digest any food, the essential organs, the liver takes rest, the stomach takes rest, the whole digestive system, the kidneys have a rest. As a consequence, the heart has a rest, and the toxins in the body begin to be cleared, the bloodstream becomes purer, and all manner of diseases is controlled. There are huge benefits, and you can look into the research. There's a book called The Fast Diet by a British doctor who ran a TV series on the subject as well. And he mentions in particular the example of the 2 fasts of the week of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yes, he's not a Muslim. He mentions the fasting of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Mondays and Thursdays, on normal weeks of the year. And he says this is the ideal. This is the ideal. Monday, because you recover from the weekend in our modern lifestyle, of the excesses of the weekend in eating and drinking. And Thursday, because it's midweek. And the consequence is he managed to lose personally a lot of weight. He says, I stopped the Thursday fast because the Monday fast was sufficient for me, because he didn't want to lose more weight. And that wasn't because he was trying hard. He'd just eat less on those 2 days. The rest of the days, he says, you'd automatically eat less. So health, sumu tasihu, fast and you'll be healthy. So the date is a complete package, and it can be combined with other foods. Sometimes it's combined with butter. butter and dates to make it more nutritious. Sometimes traditionally it's combined with either cucumbers or melons and watermelons, and they all have very similar properties. Dates are hot and dry in their traditional description, and melons, watermelons and cucumbers are wet and cold, and the combination of the two will help you gain healthy body weight, and they will balance each other out. Our Shaykh, when in Makkah, we'd sometimes be in iftar with him in the haram. In those days, in the 90s, it was possible to sit near the Kaaba with some space left for the people doing tawaf. So we'd sit there after Asr in the outer sort of circle of the mataf, and in the inner circle people would be doing tawaf and people would be reciting Quran. So you'd sit there doing tilawat and watching the mutawifin and the Kaaba, or you'd go up and do tawaf. And so on Shaykh's sufra, there would be dates and cucumbers, and this was intentional. Because at that point, when your stomach is empty, whatever you eat first will be digested well. Sometimes there'll be dates, cucumbers, and almonds. We were all students. Almonds are considered good for memory. So he'd ensure that this was placed before everybody. So basically, and the cucumber has the cooling effect as well. I mentioned the watermelon in yesterday's there's for flushing the kidneys, especially with the short nights and people who have problems with their kidneys. So basically, the date. Now this is the general point. The date is a complete food. It's a complete food, and there are many ways in eating dates. In fact, the date stones are ground as well. This is mentioned in Tib Nabawi, and the ajwa date stones are ground into fine powder, and they're used for heart conditions. And you can research this yourself, but don't try to use an ordinary grinder, and don't consume the dates, the ground powder if it's not been ground properly. Take medical advice. But the point is, this on its own, or the combination of this powder together with the date itself, or on its own, it can be used for health, to support the heart. And Shaykh Zakaria rahimullah, he would consume pan, and what he would do is, rather than using the betel nut, he would supari, he would use date stones from Medina, chop those up, and he would chew those because they soften eventually when they are in the mouth. So the date. Now, the rutab, the fresh date, and this is the relevant point, specifically here, Maryam alayhi salam just delivered a child, postnatal treatment, nutrition. Now, not tea and toast, rutab. This is the food to give to a woman who's just delivered a child. And the atibba, the mufassirin mentioned, the traditional herbalists are all agreed that there are huge health benefits for a woman who's just delivered a child for her to eat rutab, fresh dates. And this is the food which Allah Ta'ala provides for Maryam alayhi salam. So there's so much in these verses. So now she's told by the angel on behalf of Allah, فَكُلِي وَاشْرَبِي وَقَرِّي عَيْنَا. Eat and drink, eat the dates, drink the water, وَقَرِّي عَيْنَا. So this, your eating and drinking, this is for your physical well-being. Recover from the labor pain and from the labor of delivering the child. Eat and drink. This is what you need to do. So what does a woman need to do? She needs to rest and eat. She needs to rest and eat. And families who have mothers, who have wives, if you have who's just delivered a child, they should be very sensitive to this point. The initial recovery after the delivery of a child is a very important occasion, so that the woman recovers fully and she regains her natural sort of her energy, her good health. And this is where husbands and family members ought to support her. Traditionally, in Britain, in the sort of golden era of the NHS, if you like, still doing a huge contribution towards society in these circumstances, and we recognize and acknowledge that. But when the pressure wasn't so intense and perhaps resources were greater, women who had delivered a child would be kept in hospital for several days, and this was very valuable because it would give them rest. It would give them rest. Now, what happens in our communities, at least, when women deliver a child and they come home, unfortunately, the constant stream of guests who come to give to congratulate and to see the new child, relatives and family, what happens? The poor woman, rather than resting, sometimes she finds that she has to offer hospitality to the stream of guests, and it's hardly appropriate. These are some of the problems in our communities. This is one example. Another is where when people go to offer condolences after death, they basically camp there, and they don't have any consideration for the family that needs to grieve and needs some privacy as well. So where there is definitely a very sad outcome of the lockdown, there's maybe a positive as well, where people have been able to have some private time when they've needed it. Of course, there's both sides. It's a bittersweet combination. These are difficult times, and may Allah ease everyone's situation. But there are lessons that we need to learn as a community. So this is another occasion where a woman, she needs to rest. and revive her energy and her faculties. And this is where husbands should take advantage of their paternity leave and assist with housework and so forth. And so, mother-in-laws, in particular in extended families, ought to be sensitive to this and ought not to give those sort of stabbing comments which are painful at the best of times. So basically, and not to generalize, not everybody's like this. There's the exact opposite. Some family members are very considerate on occasions like this, and they give all the support that they need. So basically, eat and drink. This is for your physical well-being, and وَقَرِّ عَيْنَا, for your spiritual and mental well-being. Mental well-being. Interesting. Rings a bell with modern society, doesn't it? Postnatal depression. وَقَرِّ عَيْنَا, build a bond with the child. وَقَرِّ عَيْنَا, cool your eyes with the child. Focus your eyes on the child and develop that bond. Also in Surah Maryam, in these few verses, وَقَرِّ عَيْنَا, cool your eyes. Establish that connection with your child and feel satisfied that Allah has given you something special, something you can cherish, this bundle of happiness and joy. And this particular child, Isa ala nabina wa alayhi salatu wasalam, destined to be mercy and rahmah for the people and a sign of Allah. وَقَرِّ عَيْنَا. Now, this is this problem solved. So there's a physical nourishment, food and drink. There's the spiritual nourishment, the child itself, the child, a source of happiness. How are we for time?
22 minutes.
What about the facing the public now? Coming back to the people. What are they going to say? فَإِمَّا تَرَيِنَّ مِنَ الْبَشَرِ أَحَدًا. Then if you see anyone from human beings, فَقُولِ, then say, إِنِّي نَذَرْتُ لِلرَّحْمَنِ الصَّوْمَ. I have pledged a fast for Ar-Rahman, for Allah. فَلَنْ أُكَلِّمَ الْيَوْمَ إِنسِيًّا. So I will not talk today to any human being. In Banu Israel, silence was part of fasting. If you kept a fast, you didn't talk to anybody. You remained silent. How is it in Islam? In Islam, it's true that you do not fast from speaking as such, in that fasting and speaking are not contradictory. Speaking does not break your fast. Nevertheless, some types of speaking does nullify the virtue of your fast, and we ought to remember this. We forget. We think fasting is from eating, drinking, sexual activity. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "As-siyamu junnah ma lam yakhruqha," or kama qala alayhi salatu wasalam. Fasting is a shield until he doesn't tear it. Think of a shield, some leather stretched over a frame of metal or wood, and it's used to protect you from the spears and arrows of the enemy, and the swords of the enemy, the axes of the enemy, until the sword is rent, until it's torn apart. And now it's not a protection anymore. So what tears the protection of the fast from the nafs and shaitan, from sin, from the attack of shaitan? Well, it's actually backbiting, ghiba and namima, carrying tales and slander. These are the sins of the tongue. According to Sayyidina Ali radiyallahu anhu, they actually break the fast, and other salaf. Although the jamhur, the majority, say it doesn't cause you the fast to break in the sense that you have to repeat it, but the virtue is gone now. So we ought to be as careful with our tongues and ears. You don't speak or listen to something like this, as we are with our food and drink. And if it's raining, you keep your mouth closed, don't you? When you're walking and you're fasting, you're conscious of this. You're performing wudu, you're conscious of your fast. When we're talking, we ought to be conscious of our fast. Shaykh Zakaria rahimullah, when he would do i'tikaf in Ramadan, in Saharanpur, in Madahirul Ulum, in the huge madrasa there would be huge numbers of the senior mashayikh of the subcontinent and the world who would gather there to spend time with him. So the gatherings would be full of muhaddithin and fuqaha, the muftis and the ulama of the countries of the world, leaders of their entire communities, and they would gather to benefit from Shaykh's spiritual company and guidance. It would be packed. And in Shaykh's i'tikaf, there would be one rule. Shaykh would say, look, I won't prevent you from, traditionally, you sleep less. If you want to exert yourself for your spiritual progression in suluk, you sleep less, you eat less, you talk less, and you don't mix with people. 4 things. You sleep less, and you eat and drink less, you sleep less, you talk less, and you don't mix with people. 4 things. So Shaykh would say, look, I don't tell you to sleep less. If you need to sleep more, you don't find it within yourself to reduce your hours of sleep, okay, sleep more. I don't say don't eat to your fill. If you want to eat more, you don't want to reduce your intake of food, fine. But he would say, my dear ones, pyaro, whatever you do, don't speak to anyone. Hold your tongue. This would be the golden rule. And he would reprimand anybody who was found talking in i'tikaf. Maulana Ashraf Ali Thani rahimahullah. Subhanallah, Khaja Azizul Hasan Majzub rahmatullahi, the famous poet from the Khulafa and from the Murideen of Sheikh Zakaria rahimahullah, from Sheikh Maulana Ashraf Thani rahimahullah. Well, initially when he came into the Zawiyah, the Khanqa, and he spent time with the Sheikh wanted him to practice silence. And so he made him wear a placard around his neck which said, Khamosh, silence. Now imagine what that does to your ego. You have to wear a badge. The whole i'tikaf, everybody's seeing. But the point is, if you're all students, then everybody's ego is down. When you're with a genuine sheikh in his company and you're there to correct yourself, so he would wear this placard for a period of time. And everyone sees him, it says Khamosh. And you can't even smile because you're in the company of the sheikh. No one's allowed to talk to him, he's not allowed to talk to anybody. Sheikh Zakaria himself, when he was a child, Mullah Yahya's upbringing with him, he would not be allowed to mingle with various youth. Sheikh, his father, would keep an eye on where he's performing salah in the same part of the masjid every day. If he was found performing salah with the same children regularly, he'd be asked about this. You're making some new friends who are having a negative influence on you. So this ikhtilat and mingling, it needs to be of the right sort or avoided. That's what causes all the problems, when there's a negative influence on us. So talking. So in this ummah too, talking is a problem. Perhaps the majority of our sins are because of talking. On the day of Qiyamah, what will, as is mentioned in Hadith, what will cause a person to go headlong into the fire of Jahannam is nothing but the harvest of the tongues. Hasaidu al-sinatikum. Think of a huge field of crops and you're using a scythe traditionally or modern machinery to take down piles and piles of the crop. Well, when we are talking, we're chopping the outcomes, the harvest of our speech, which is recorded. Ma yalfidhu min qawlin illa ladayhi raqibun atid. Surah Qaf. A person doesn't utter anything except that there's a present ready recorder, an angel who's taking everything down. Allah protect us. So this is important. So in Islam too, we underestimate the importance of silence during fasting. So Sayyidah Maryam alayhi salam is told that when you go to the people and they want to question you, where's this baby come from? Where's the child come from? You know, my mother, I remember her on this occasion, rahimahullah. I remember as a very small child asking her this question, as children do, where do babies come from? And she said to me, she says, the angels deliver the child. Very wise way of explaining to a small child. And they do, because it's mentioned in Hadith. The ruh is put into the body by the angels. So how do we answer? In an age in which children perhaps know more than they might at that age, we ought to talk of the qudra of Allah. Rather than a discussion which is inappropriate for small children, we can explain how Allah causes us to grow from a drop of water. We are caused to grow. So talk of the qudra of Allah rather than talking about the things which are inappropriate for a child. So the Quran, just take them to the Quran. If they already know more than they might, then just take them to the Quran and just translate it for them, where the drop of water, you can use these words because the word water is used in the Quran for the semen, then the clot of blood, then the lump of flesh, then the skeleton, then the muscles and musculature, the skin, and then the new creation. So you attribute to this to the creation of Allah, and then you talk about death and life after death and coming out of the grave. So if you teach children two things, then that's your personal and sexual education all covered. One is the Quranic description of procreation and birth, and it will never be a cause of harm because it's nur. And the second is Kitabut Tahara, talking about Tahara in Islam, which includes istinja and it includes when you have to do ghusl, Kitabut Tahara. These two are sufficient as a complete package in a maktab, in a school, in a madrasa, or at home, to teach your children as they come of age everything they need to know about the subject. And on top of this, there's one more, and that is the halal and haram of sexual relationships. That's a complete package for you. So basically, full syllabus. So basically, back to our point, and we conclude briefly. So where was I? فَأَجَاءَهَا الْمَخَاضُ إِلَى Yeah, when you come to your people, if anyone questions you, where's the child come from? Where's the child come from? Say, إِنِّي نَذَرْتُ لِلرَّحْمَنِ صَوْمًا. And you say, saying here is with sign language, with an indication of the hand. I'm fasting today. I can't talk. I can't talk. So, إِنِّي نَذَرْتُ لِلرَّحْمَنِ صَوْمًا فَلَنْ أُكَلِّمُ الْيَوْمَ إِنْسِيًّا. So I can't talk to anyone today. I won't talk to anyone today. So that's what she does. She goes to her people and she arrives before them, and then what happens, what exchange happens, and how does she respond, and what miracle becomes apparent on this occasion. This is something we'll talk about in the next dars, if Allah wills. We conclude for now. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين.